Welcome, everyone, to Season 2, Episode 8 of Level Agency's Test, Learn, Grow podcast, where we believe all marketing should create value, build trust, and inspire change. I'm your host for today, Dale Reether, Digital Marketing Lead here at Level. In this episode, we're diving back into the world of higher education marketing to talk about embracing machine learning, artificial intelligence, and automation, and how schools and companies, to say, should be leveraging these technologies to improve their marketing efforts by becoming more agile and effective. I'm joined by my colleagues, Mr. David Baps, VP of Agency Development and Partnerships here at the agency, and Kiefer Kopka, who's a team lead here, spearheading one of our education vertical teams. Dave, Kiefer, what's up? Welcome back to the podcast. Feel like we were just here talking recently. How's it going?
I think we were, and to be introduced as a Mister, treating my age with respect, Dale. I have to whether I admire that or whether it's a sign that I need to be moving on to greener pastures. I don't know.
It's a sign of respect. Let's go.
We'll take it we'll take it. Thank you.
Kiefer, how's it going?
Good to be here. It is kind of ironic. I think the first podcast episode I was on was about audience automation within Facebook. So really coming full circle and taking a step back at the whole picture now.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, before we even go deeper, for old guys like me, I think it's oftentimes just helpful to talk about some of the fundamental distinctions and between automation, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, because I think they do have different applications for some of what you're talking about. You know, for me at least, when I think about some of those distinctions, you know, automation is a type of software that follows some pre-programmed set of rules that ultimately should create something in a more efficient or effective way. Artificial intelligence is a software that's designed to simulate human thinking. And machine learning is an application of AI that starts without knowledge and becomes intelligent by identifying patterns and insights through algorithms that start to become smart in terms of their predictions or predictive power.
Yep, absolutely. So a couple hairy topics that, there's a lot of different paths we can go down talking about machine learning, AI, and automation. Obviously, it could be a very advanced topic. We're going to talk about it through the lens of marketing and how we use it every day at Level to become faster and smarter and more efficient with our clients' dollars. So just to kind of kick things off, what is machine learning? What is AI? What is marketing automation? Kiefer, I'll kick this one over to you. For machine learning, how do we think about that through the lens of, paid media and marketing as we're working through it for our clients today?
Absolutely. So, and full disclosure, I'm not a developer, I'm not a programmer. So this is all me speaking firsthand of my experience. The way we talk about machine learning, automation, AI, it really comes down to how effectively are we running our campaigns, and are we doing a lot of the legwork, or are we letting machines do a lot of the legwork? So pretty much since I've started at Level, we really started to see a shift from the traditional way of buying media where you were in there every day, changing bids, making small adjustments, making these tiny, minute changes, that really kind of push the needle in a noticeable way. Within the last 4 or 5 years, it's really become a lot more automation first, right? So we're designing campaigns that are leaning into conversion automation, where it's like, I know what a conversion looks like, and I want my campaigns to serve to the people most likely to convert. We're leaning more into creative automation and dynamic creative, where we're giving the platforms many options, and they're allowed to make combinations based on specific criteria and what the audience is looking at. And we're using a lot of AI tools to kind of feed models that predict long-term success. So we know, hey, what is our barometer of success? We have leap goals and we have, enrollment goals we have to hit, but based on the data we have available and some pretty impressive algorithms, what will performance look like over the next year or the next 5 years even?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up a lot of ways that machine learning, AI, and automation come into play in marketing that people don't traditionally think about. I think when a lot of people hear at least marketing automation, they think email, but this spans so much further than just beyond email. That's just one very practical and simple way that automation comes into play for marketing. But it's in platforms, in our media platforms, it's in our processes. CRM, you can use a lot of automation tools. And it really spans just beyond like kind of like what the service level be when people think about automation. So, Kiefer, what are some examples of the ways that we're really using these tools for our clients right now, especially in the higher education space?
Yeah. So I think, a lot of the strategies we're talking about lately are tools that are strategies that really lean into the automated side of all of our advertising platforms. I mentioned earlier conversion optimized campaigns. That's generally what we're running against, but it's becoming a lot more sophisticated where we are not just going after, the people most likely to turn into the initial inquiry. We're trying to be mindful of, how much revenue a certain type of conversion might generate and compare that against our spend and give that data to platforms like Google to say, hey, here's what we know about our audience. Here's how much profit we can potentially make on them. You do everything you can to keep us profitable. And that leads to better success overall. The other component of this is, for years, we've used like lookalike based audiences or similar audiences over on the Google side, which are really giving a ton of information about what your ideal audience looks like and letting the platforms, make decisions through machine learning and through algorithms to determine, okay, of all of the people I have on my platform, who are the most similar to this initial seed list I was given. All right. And then I talked before, like the creative aspect is key right now. I think the creative aspect is where a lot of people are overlooking it. There's a really effective strategy within Meta right now. I know Meta is a struggle for a lot of people, but there's an effective strategy in Meta called DABA. It stands for Dynamic Ads Broad Audience. Basically, it is kind of the pinnacle of a conversion optimized campaign where you're effectively targeting by negation. You're saying, here's all the people I don't want to target in my geo area. Go find me the ones that will convert, right? And then at the ad level, you're giving it a ton of creative variety. You're saying, here's all the copy you can use. Here's all the collateral, all the images, all the video. You design the best ad and you find the person and I'll pay you money as long as it's converting, basically, right? So,
Yeah. The dynamic aspect of automation and machine learning for creative is huge. It's not just within Meta, right? Like take and let's switch over to B2B for a second. Like let's talk about an ABM strategy. Like that's where that starts to come into play with dynamic personalization within your ads and also on landing pages. So you're personalizing content as much as possible to the person you're talking to on the other side of the screen, which is obviously a huge trend across the marketing ethos right now. So I think that's a great call out. Like thinking about this from a creative aspect, and how you can be more relevant to your audience is very important right now, and something that all companies, not just higher education institutions, should be looking into and leveraging and testing right now.
the other thing is kind of going along with what you said earlier about email marketing, right? Email marketing has been around for a while. People have gotten very sophisticated with it. And you're right. You basically need to take your email campaign and recognize that it is one component of your marketing. And that same level of complexity can exist throughout your marketing ecosystem. We talk a lot about how are our audiences lined up? How are they being messaged differently at the different, and everything that you're doing in your email or your text message nurturing strategy should be consistent across all of your paid media. So it really is, adding that extra level of complexity, leaning into platform automation and machine learning to get you the best possible results while being mindful of, hey, how am I controlling the narrative to get these results? Recognizing the human component of it as well.
Yeah. So whenever we think about email marketing and automation, a lot of times people are just thinking about, you can trigger a send automatically, but there's also an element to that where you can be automating how your audiences are segmented within CRM. So you have different personas, or you want to segment listed by, let's just say, age to keep it really simple. But I think there's also an element to that within media platforms too, when it comes to like different retargeting audiences based on different pages and things like that. Do you have any insights there on how we leverage that for higher ed specifically?
Absolutely. So when it comes to your audience targeting, we really like to have automated solutions so that anyone who's used like Salesforce Marketing Cloud has experienced this kind of stuff, but really creating it so the CRM is constantly updating our platforms with the most relevant information. So like from a purely prospecting standpoint, making sure that all of our audiences are being fed information about, who's actually enrolling, right? So we're giving it student data to say, hey, these are the types of people we want you to go after for prospecting. And that's really easy. The more complex aspect of this, and the thing that I see a lot of people overlook, is making sure that in each of your funnel positions, you're negating audience members you've already converted, right? So like your remarketing audience should exclude everyone who's in your prospecting audience, and your nurturing audience should exclude everyone in your prospecting and remarketing audience, and all the way down. And that kind of automation to keep things moving through the funnel and keep the narrative of your whatever you're selling consistent, and really educate the person as they move through.
Something I want to dive into next is really about AI, and let's talk about the belle of the ball, ChatGPT. Kiefer, for your clients, what are some of the ways that your team is leveraging ChatGPT right now?
I feel like the ways I'm leveraging ChatGPT and my team is going to sound a little bit basic, but a lot of the things that we're using it for currently are really effective and quick applications of like keyword research and finding new terms to really expedite our search campaigns. Giving it criteria around, okay, here's our keywords, here's our ads that have a poor quality score. Can you make them better? And then taking that as a basis. The biggest thing that I tell my staff this, and we say this a lot internally, is like something like ChatGPT. It's a great basis for where to start, but it's never going to give you, or it's very rarely going to give you a final product in its current form, right? It always takes that little bit of human intuition, that little bit of human polish to make sure that it aligns with the business objectives, whatever you're trying to accomplish. It also sounds more logical and more human, and also it's not filled with inaccuracies. I mean, one of the biggest things we see consistently is just something like ChatGPT isn't always 100% accurate. So it requires that additional human eye. And this is interesting because every example of automation and machine learning and application of artificial intelligence I've seen has always required a little bit of human polish at the end, right? And I think that's the real component to remember is it's going to get you that first 50%, and that last 50% is the difference between a really effective marketer and someone who's really just trying to lean into a computer to do a lot of its work for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's more important than ever after the past couple of months that we've had and ChatGPT kind of taking the world by storm. When I think about it, I think it's really just getting to ideas faster. And like you said, from a marketing standpoint, something that's going to be customer facing, we need a human behind the wheel kind of giving it that polish and final touch. But for stuff that isn't customer facing, it's cutting so much time out of your day to day, at least for me, like writing emails, like organizing agendas, things like that. And, if you're working with an agency like us, just frees up so much more time for us to be able to think strategically about your business. I know that's not really on the topic of creative, but, I think for repetitive tasks that aren't customer facing, like if you're not leveraging this type of technology, then you're wasting time at this point. And, for creative that is customer facing, yes, absolutely. Like you still need to be driving the strategy there, but I think it's really about getting to good ideas faster and iterating. Very rarely are you ever going to ask it something straight up and it's going to be like, yep, this is perfect. But if you go back and forth with it a little bit, just like you would another human, like you get to a pretty close spot, I think.
And Dale, you bring up a great point too, which is that ChatGPT really allows for faster iteration, and beyond the time save, anybody who does creative work would tell you that iteration breeds better quality, right? And so to the extent that you can actually get through 2, 3, 5 iterations of whatever it is that you're working on, it's likely that with human input, that the quality of that creation is actually going to be of a higher quality than it would have been if you were working on it yourself.
Absolutely. I've seen a lot of success where it's like, I didn't like all this stuff, but I did like this piece. And when I iterated again, oh, I like this piece too. And combining a couple of different outputs and then adding some of my own spin onto it gets you to that spot where I probably wouldn't have thought of the things that it laid out for me in some of the outputs. So I think you're right, Dave. Like those iterations do enhance what you would normally probably spend hours doing. And probably including things that you wouldn't have thought of on your own.
Right. And so my example is less of a marketing example, but certainly a business example. Our team is in growth mode. We're looking to hire for different roles. We're thinking about adding some roles that don't exist to our team. And, over the weekend, I had to write some job descriptions. And, typically that's something that is a time intensive process if you don't have an example of what the role actually looks like. I use ChatGPT to help as a starting point in creating the job description. I liked some of what I saw, didn't like other pieces of what I saw. I tried another iteration of it. I liked it a little bit better. And then I kind of took it from there. And the end product was a lot better. And it took me considerably less time.
It is a great tool for brainstorming. Like it is amazing for going back and forth and developing ideas. And you're right, it'll give you options that you might not consider. Like there are a lot of marketing tactics that I've tried in the past and didn't work, and I've just kind of written them off. But having this conversation with Chat GPT, it's like, okay, maybe I should consider this again. It's been a couple years. Two things that kind of the pitfalls that I've seen firsthand and I really want to draw attention to. One of the things Chat GPT can't do is it can't leverage new data from 2023 beta information from Google. Take into account various, things that have happened in the world, in current events and stuff. So it does become a situation where it is operating with a little bit of outdated information, which is always something you got to consider. The other thing that I've seen, because I've tried to get it to, do my job for me at times, if you try to get it to write something really complex, like a marketing strategy, the area it's going to fail in consistently I've seen is when it is asked to think more holistically about things. So it might have a really good option if you feed it the right data about cost per lead and cost per enrollment, what platforms you're using, but it's never going to be able to really, or in its current state at least, it doesn't really get that component of, okay, I need to spend money in YouTube because it lifts everything. It lifts organic and it lifts search. It doesn't have that eye. So one of the things I see as I was trying to test this for marketing strategy is it's going to cut the areas that we really advocate for staying. Right. So it's going to cut budget from things like TikTok and YouTube and OTT because it doesn't have that data to go off of. Whereas we know, through our own analysis, through our own modeling, how effective those types of strategies are.
Yeah. And just to bring this a little bit full circle, it's a lack of data, right? In context. That's why you got to iterate off it. That's the same thing with machine learning, right? Our campaigns get better from machine learning as they have more data to go off of. Whenever you're using a tool, like an AI tool like that, it's going to work better the more information and data and context that you feed into it.
And if I could actually go off of that I have a really great example recently of how clear this is to me. It's always been clear to me, but, going through a specific performance struggle, I saw how much, automation and machine learning for conversion optimized campaigns really impact things. Obviously GA4 is coming up. So we're making a lot of shifts to make sure all of our conversion goals within Google Ads are compliant. We did run into a situation where we had to pause a conversion goal and we didn't realize how much our campaigns were leveraged against it. So when it didn't have that conversion goal anymore, at least it didn't convert in the same way. It really hurt our performance because the machine learning had geared towards that so much that when it started getting fed bad information, it started pulling out. As a side note, if you ever run into that, there are tools within Google called data exclusions, where you can basically say, don't use this part for machine learning. So that's really effective too, making sure not only that you are giving it the best possible information, the most accurate conversion information, the most accurate CRM data, but also realizing if you're testing something and it doesn't work, make sure you exclude that component so that you're not feeding it bad data.
Yeah, absolutely. So, big, and it's in the title of this episode, leaning into machine learning, AI, and automation, not away from it. Why do we think people are so hesitant to lean into this right now? What are some of the things that you've experienced, Kiefer, where, and I can add some context here too, but I wanted to give you the floor first, like where people are hesitant to adopt this kind of technology and why.
One of the things that I've seen pretty consistently is that when we adopt more automation, our campaigns, our marketing mix looks simpler, right? Because we really lean into a lot of consolidation. We use dynamic creative, we use dynamic ads, like all of this stuff comes together and makes very simple campaigns. And sometimes there is comfort in complexity because things are, very complex and it looks like they're very sophisticated. But in a lot of situations, especially now, you're working with a scenario where you're doing twice as much work to get the same result, right? By not leaning into these automation tools. So that's a part of it I've definitely seen. Like, companies, especially when they have to, explain their decisions and justify their actions, they want a little bit more complexity because there's a little bit of an optics component to it. It does look a little bit better. And when you lean into automation, you're taking a lot of that visibility and a lot of that choice to make campaigns that are geared to feed the algorithm the best possible information. That's something I see a lot. The other thing that I see predominantly in education marketing is compliance, right? We have a huge section of our business that is very focused around making sure that our advertising is compliant as possible. Now, I'm really experienced working with that. When you start talking about things like dynamic ads, responsive search ads aren't quite as bad because you can get all that copy approved, but something like a dynamic ad that is using just your website to determine what the ad copy should be makes people a little bit nervous. When you're talking about copy getting paired together and whatever, pattern makes the most sense for the user, again, lack of clarity, lack of visibility, it becomes concerning. So those are the things I've encountered the most, but there's a host of reasons around, not feeling 100% great about moving forward in an automated strategy.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, Kiefer. Dale and I were talking to some marketers and that work for a financial services business here in Pittsburgh earlier today, highly regulated industry. And we were talking about the application of ChatGPT and just AI in general. And that was a big concern that they had, which was that they needed to ensure that compliance protocols were followed and adhered to. And so the idea of innovating and leaning in more heavily into the topic that we're describing here was not as there was not as much of an openness to do that as there is perhaps in a marketing agency environment that we work in.
Yeah, I think it's a lack of control is what you guys are describing. And then something that I've seen just through the lens of a creative is I think people are a little bit afraid to let go of the reins, where there is work happening now in a matter of minutes that used to take hours and was an essential part of a creative's job. And I think there's a little bit of a mindset shift that's going to need to happen. And this starts to get into the ethical manner of this a little bit too, where like we're going to have to think about different ways of what it means to be creative when using these tools. And it's going to be more about providing the context, providing the strategy, providing the inputs that get us to somewhere faster, as opposed to like, just one small example from a design standpoint. There's tools where you can remove backgrounds and stuff in a matter of a click, where that used to be a designer's job to do. And that's a small example, but you see it in copywriting very obviously. Even like on the media side, Kiefer, like keyword research is, it doesn't take as long. And, I think some people are having a hard time let go of the reins, but I think it's going to be about thinking about how you could be creative differently while using these tools, getting to ideas faster, and that way you can test faster to figure out what is working. But that's just something that I've seen as a hesitancy from the creative side of things. And same with like AI image generators. We're getting to a place where, Dave, I sent you some the other day where you can make a photo realistic. You couldn't even tell the difference that it wasn't a real picture of them. I think there's going to be a lot of hesitancy around giving the reins to AI in that regard. and, some ethical things that we're going to have to figure out as not just marketers, but a society when it comes to creative artwork.
Absolutely. And I saw this in the data and analytics world that I came out of before coming to Level. And there's a history of people doing a job a certain way and having pride in their work. And when something new comes in and totally disrupts that, and in some ways kind of reinvents what you did, and maybe even does it a little bit better, there's a threat, right? And some people are going to be very resistant to that. It takes, I think, a special person to think about, well, how could I actually become better at what I do by embracing this versus fighting it. And there's some media behind this too, right? You're constantly seeing in the news how jobs are going to be replaced by automation, AI, and machine learning, rather than having more of a kind of maybe an even conversation about how it's actually going to make people better at their jobs or create new and different jobs in the future.
I want to stress, I have a number of different clients, and they're all, some of them, want more control over things. Some of them are open to less control, right? And I've been tackling various automation and machine learning tests for as long as I've been at Level at this point, right? And so my earliest, successes were campaign consolidation on Facebook and things of that nature, and, maximize conversion and target CPA in search. So, and one of the things I've seen consistently is the company that is more interested in using it quicker is going to get the better results sooner, right? They're going to be the ones that are getting that better cost per lead and, measuring down to cost per enrollment and getting as efficient as possible. And if you let too many things stand in the way of that, whether it's your own hesitations, it's compliance, it's legal, anything like that, just know that there are other companies that are not going to let those things stand in their way, right? They're going to keep pushing forward, and, they're ready to slam into that wall as long as it gets into the other side.
I totally agree. I mean, it's kind of like man and machine versus machine. And the AI enabled company and employee is going to be the person who's on the other end of this.
Yep. And I think it's going to, and if you don't embrace this, another thing that I'm seeing, especially through the lens of creative, is that this is going to enable more people to be creative because there's not as many barriers to doing it. Like before, you had to understand, how to use all these like more advanced Adobe products. And now it's getting to a place where you can use something like a Canva that anybody can jump in and understand pretty immediately and get to a pretty close to the same result. And it's only going to get better. Like Adobe is starting to roll out their own products in this way. And I think it's going to enable a lot more people to be creative and create really cool things without necessarily having the technical expertise that you used to. And you see the same thing with coding, right? We heard for how long, learn how to code. Well, now not everybody can code, but everybody could get pretty damn close now because we have ChatGPT that can just do it for you. I think I saw some guy created an app from scratch just from starting with an idea using ChatGPT, asked it to write the code, how to build it, and created a brand new app in a matter of a weekend with zero experience. Like it's going to break down a lot of barriers for people to do things that they wouldn't have been able to before. So if you're not embracing the new technology, I think the people that do know what they're doing and embrace are going to pass you up, but also potentially people that didn't know what they were doing prior to this coming out you're going to be competing with that too. All right. So we covered a lot today, but we really wanted to just leave you with 3 things that you should be thinking about right now related to machine learning, AI, and automation. Dave, what is one thing that you want people to take away from this conversation today?
Well, I think the biggest thing, especially for those that are feeling a bit overwhelmed or reluctant to lean in, is to start simple. Find something that is high effort, kind of pain in your butt to do, and see if there might be a way to use some of these new tools to make your life easier. I mean, the example I used a little bit earlier in the podcast and writing some job descriptions is a great example of that. Now I'm feeling more confident to find other ways to use ChatGPT in what I do every day.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue for my takeaway is this technology is here and it's only going to get more advanced. Start adopting it. The title of the episode says it. Lean in, don't run away. Learn how to adapt in your role and start testing different ways that you can be more efficient and effective in whether that's media, creative, or administrative tasks. There are ways that this can make your life easier and give you the space to think as more of a strategic marketer or even outside of marketing as this applies to business as a whole. It just frees up more of your time and your headspace to do the human work and let the robots do the robot work. Even as AI becomes less robot-y and more human-y by the minute, which is scary in its own right. But the takeaway is adopt, lean into it, don't run away from it because it's here. It's only going to be adopted more by the world at large, and we need to find ways as marketers and business people to work with it, not against it. Kiefer, what's one thing you want people to take away from this?
At this point, I think it goes without saying, like, if you're not using automated bidding strategies in most of your campaigns, not just Google, but generally across the board, that's step one. That was step one, 3 years ago at this point. Now it's about what kind of data are you feeding it? Is the most accurate data possible? Are you feeding it true values about your business objectives? We talked a little bit about, making sure that you're actually going after revenue goals and you're supplying that revenue information and you're making campaigns that are designed to go after the things you actually care about. We're not just generating leads anymore. It's like I always say in these podcasts, we're trying to get down to cost per enrollment and an effective cost per enrollment. So it starts with automated strategies and it ends with putting as much information into that system as possible that aligns with your true business goal.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, I appreciate the time today, guys. We covered a lot. We gave a brief overview of the difference between machine learning, AI, and automation. We talked about why it's important in the world of marketing and business at large. Gave a few examples of how our teams are thinking about using these technologies across media, creative, and even administrative tasks to do our jobs better and more efficiently. And we addressed some of the concerns that people have right now about adopting this and why you should lean in and not away from it if you want to succeed. So again, appreciate your guys' time. It's always awesome having you on the podcast. This was the second of the 5 major things our agency is focusing on right now when it comes to higher education marketing success. But this really applies to every vertical. We didn't lean too much into higher education here. This applies across the board. But that also means that it applies in higher ed. So if you're in higher ed, take what we talked about here today and start applying it. Stay tuned for future episodes. We'll dive into the remaining 5 things that we highlighted in terms of what we're focused on in higher ed this year. That's measuring the impact of brand awareness tactics. Again, not just a higher ed thing, but very important in higher ed as well. Nurturing leads beyond email to drive enrollments and investing in high quality video and user generated content. If you made it this far, thanks for listening. And until next time, connect with us on LinkedIn and YouTube, where we're always sharing insightful content for marketers and growth-minded organizations alike. Dave, Kiefer, thanks again.
Thanks, Dale.
Thanks, Dale.